All right, Chris, we spend so much time talking about offenses and different offenses and which offenses are going to be better, which ones are having the rest of the league catch up with them. Let's talk a little defense, because some defenses may be better this year after some acquisitions we've seen in the offseason. And I want to start with the Rams, because the Rams are definitely a team that we've been focused on excessively as it relates to the health of Todd Gurley, whether or not Sean McVay's offense is already getting a little stale, whether Jared Goff is truly a franchise quarterback. Meanwhile, Wade Phillips is still presiding over a pretty damn good defense. And Ndamukong Suh is gone. LaMarcus Joyner is gone, but they've added Eric Weddle to play safety and also Clay Matthews to rush the passer. Is that an upgrade? Is that a net positive in your mind for the LA Rams?
No, I don't think it is. No, I mean, again, I like Eric Weddle. He gives them some experience. He's still playing at a very, high level, but I don't know if he's the player that LaMarcus Joyner is at this point of his career. LaMarcus Joyner's in the prime of his career. And Clay Matthews, yeah, he adds certainly some depth and another edge pass rusher. That's a close one as far as swapping him out and his value to Ndamukong Suh. Listen, I think at their very best, Ndamukong Suh is capable of being more dominant at this point of his career, like we saw in the playoffs. When he turned it on, he played like one of the better defensive tackles in all of football. So the Rams defense is really good to begin with. I don't know if they made it that much better this offseason. I think it's about status quo.
Yeah, one of the more intriguing stories is related to the Rams last year during the regular season. They traded for Dante Fowler Jr. at the deadline because they were exasperated with Ndamukong Suh's inability to rush the passer, and he never really lived up to what they expected. And even Wade Phillips wasn't able to push his buttons to get the absolute most out of Suh on a consistent basis. That's one of the big challenges for Bruce Arians and Todd Bowles, the head coach and defensive coordinator, respectively, in Tampa this year, where Suh will be once again expected to play at a high level without that postseason chase really giving him the extra level of motivation. But, something that Clay Matthews said last week about Phillips and his defense.
Yeah.
And this is what great coaches do. When you have great players, you find ways to let great players make plays.
Right.
And that's what he's going to do with Matthews, and that's what he's going to do with Weddle. Maximize what these guys can bring to the defense, and don't be so tied to your system that you lose sight of the flexibility you can apply to showcase great players when they come your way.
He'll find a way, Wade Phillips. He always does, whether it was Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, years with the Houston Texans. He will find a creative way to use Clay Matthews. And the good thing for Clay Matthews, too, is I don't expect him to be an every down type player. I don't know how they're going to orchestrate their defensive line, but either way, they got other guys that can come off the edge, too, to where, he's going to be fresh when it's his opportunity to get after the quarterback or whatever it may be. Because, some years, I don't know. They're going to go Dante Fowler and Michael Brockers at defense end like they did last year, where Clay Matthews is just like a situational nickel pass rush part, some type of defense end. I mean, I think that's how I envision him being used more than just an every down, in the trenches type D lineman at this point of his career.
Same division, San Francisco 49ers, another team where we're so obsessed with the offense. But with the arrival of Dee Ford, they gave up a 2020 second-round pick to get him after the Chiefs had tagged him. That trade brought Ford to San Francisco. And then with the second overall pick in the draft, Nick Bosa, the younger brother of Joey Bosa, joins the team. That pass rush beefed up in San Francisco is, and look, I'm a firm believer that if you've got great pass rushers, Chris, you or I could play in the secondary. It doesn't matter at that point if the quarterback doesn't have time to set up and throw.
No, and the 49ers defense was a handful last year. Great improvements. I mean, really. And I expect them to be a top 10 defense in football this year. Their defensive line with DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead, and now you got Dee Ford and Bosa coming off the edge. I mean, that's serious. And they have pretty good depth behind it as well. So they're going to be able to send waves at you. Let's not forget they got Quan Alexander at middle linebacker. That's going to help replace the fact that Reuben Foster's not there. You're going to have their version of a Bobby Wagner who can just fly around the field. I think this 49ers defense is going to be a force to be reckoned with this year. Too much pressure has been on that 49ers offense the first 2 years of the Shanahan regime. It's always they got to score and put up a lot of points. I think this is a year where the defense could maybe win them some games 20-17 or something like that. But they greatly improved their defense this offseason.
You know, the fact that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't on the physically unable to perform list at the outset of training camp was the headline. Quan Alexander not on PUP either after tearing his ACL during the regular season. And all the money they gave him, the risk they took financially, paying off so far with Alexander healthy and ready to learn that defense. And one more name to keep an eye on. Former Chargers defensive back Jason Verrett.
Yes.
They love this guy. He had an Achilles tear. If he's healthy, he could shake up that secondary in San Francisco.
Yes, Mike, I'm glad you brought him up. I didn't want to keep going down the list of names here, but when Jason Verrett is healthy, he is one of the best pure man-to-man cover corners in all of football, but he's been injured a lot through his career. So if he can stay through preseason and the season healthy, that's only going to make that secondary that much more dangerous.
The team with the best offense in football last year, the Kansas City Chiefs, has a defense that was last year not very good. But it's not going to take much improvement for the Chiefs' defense to balance out that fantastic offense. And this year, the arrival of Frank Clark, who ended up being the guy they picked up after trading Dee Ford because they think Clark better fits the 4-3 defense that Steve Spagnuolo, the new defensive coordinator, is implementing. You throw on top of that Tyrann Mathieu, one of my favorite players of all time in the NFL, the leadership he brings, the skill sets he has, that this could be, with Spagnuolo there and these two guys, this could be a much better defense in Kansas City, and it's not going to take much to propel the Chiefs that next step beyond the AFC Championship game.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, they just need a little defense, right? We just can't have the worst defense in football, and I think Spagnuolo is going to be a great improvement for that defense, but the talent and the things they did on the defensive side of the ball. First off, Chris Jones is still there, right? Chris Jones is in the conversation for best interior pass rusher in football, not named Aaron Donald. I mean, him, Fletcher Cox, Akeem Hicks, I mean, he is special. So you got him in the middle of the defense. But getting a Frank Clark, getting Emmanuel Ogbah in that trade for the with the Cleveland Browns, signing a guy like Alex Okafor. And then you mentioned Tyrann Mathieu in the back end, but I like what Kansas City did up front. Dee Ford's a small, pure pass rusher type. Justin Houston, good, but not great anymore. Not the guy he was a few years ago. These guys can do everything, Mike. That's what I like. It's a little New Englandy where they're going to be able to move everybody around. Ogbah can play defensive tackle or defense end. Frank Clark, same thing. He's talented enough to kind of do both as well. So I kind of like the system and personnel fit more now in Kansas City than I have in years past. I think they're going to be greatly improved.
When the Browns took Denzel Ward instead of Bradley Chubb in the 2018 draft, one of the reasons given for the move was they really like Emmanuel Ogbah. Well, as you mentioned, he's gone, and one of the reasons he's gone, Olivier Vernon was acquired via trade. Also, Sheldon Richardson signs with the Browns as a free agent. Another team that we're so focused on, Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, David Njoku. But that defense, sneaky great potential in Cleveland, and Vernon and Richardson really beef up a front four that's going to be headlined by Myles Garrett, the number 1 overall pick in the draft in 2017.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe you correct me, but I'm pretty sure I got this right. I mean, this is, I think, 3 Pro Bowlers on the defensive line. I don't know if any defensive line in modern history has had 3 Pro Bowlers on their D-line at the same time. That's kind of special right there when you just talk about Garrett, Richardson, and Olivier Vernon. Olivier Vernon has not lived up to the money he got from the New York Giants when he was a free agent leaving the Miami Dolphins, but a really awesome all-around football player. And again, like we talked about with Kansas City, hey, the guy they got coming in there, Steve Wilks from the Arizona Cardinals, he's a hell of a defensive coach. He's going to implement that Carolina Panthers defensive scheme. I really like, the Cleveland defense, let alone, you mentioned, Denzel Ward being there in the back end. They got Morgan Burnett at safety to help out that position a little bit. But, man, I looked at, again, the draft, the second round, they got Greedy Williams. Greedy Williams still the best pure cover corner in the draft for my money. It was more about tackling. And, we talk about tackling a lot when we talk about Deion Sanders and Darrell Green and Darrell Revis. Very important, right? Very, very. That's what I talk about with Jalen Ramsey to start it off. You too. I usually go, he's tackling. I mean, that to me was one of the dumbest things of the draft this year. The best pure cover corner dropped to the second round because they didn't know if he was a willing enough tackler. Then nobody's going to even give a damn. As long as he just gets a guy down during the season and he's covering the other team's top 1 or 2 receivers, you're not going to hear anything about tackling. And I think he's very capable of doing that. I like what Cleveland did on defense this offseason.
And the thing to remember about Denzel Ward, he had some concussion issues last year about the way he tackles. Greg Williams, who became the interim head coach and was the defensive coordinator, called him out on at least one occasion for tackling in a way that created that possibility of having a head injury or a neck injury. So Denzel Ward needs to protect himself a little bit more, but he's got the skills. And along with Greedy Williams, this could be a special team on both sides of the ball.
Which one's
So
most improved?
awful.
Who do you get? Who do you think won out of the four we talked about? Like, who do you think's made the biggest jump? It's a tough one.
I think the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs because Andy Reid finally parted ways with Bob Sutton, because of the arrival of Frank Clark, who I think was very underrated in Seattle, and I'm a big Tyrann Mathieu fan, and I think he's going to, I remember when the Cardinals did the All or Nothing series a few years ago, the Amazon series that goes through the regular season. There was a couple of scenes where Tyrann Mathieu, he just oozes leadership, and I think the defense desperately needs that in Kansas City.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.